The morning sun hit the tarmac at Naval Special Warfare Center in Coronado like a hammer on an anvil. Lieutenant Kira Thornton stood at attention, her red auburn hair pulled tight in a regulation bun. Her blue eyes fixed forward. At 5'4" and 128 pounds, she knew what every man in this formation was thinking. Too small, too soft, too female. She'd heard it all before during buds. The whispers in the chow hall, the barely concealed smirks during Hell Week, the quiet bets on when she'd ring the bell and quit. She'd proven them wrong then. She'd do it again now. Commander Hayes Bradshaw, callsign Hawk, walked down the line of candidates with the measured precision of a man who'd sent warriors into the dark for 20 years. When he stopped in front of Kira, his weathered face showed nothing. "Thornton," he said, his voice carrying across the concrete, "you're being offered a slot in the Advanced Scout Sniper course. Camp Pendleton. Combined Marines and SEALs. Only 12 candidates selected. You interested?" Kira's heart hammered against her ribs, but her voice came out steady. "Yes, sir." Hawk studied her for a long moment. "It's the hardest shooting program in the military. 89% fail rate. You understand what you're walking into?" "Yes, sir." "Good. You ship out tomorrow morning, 0500. Don't be late." As Hawk moved on, Kira felt the weight of a dozen stares burning into her back. She'd just been handed an opportunity most SEALs would kill for, but she also knew the target had just grown larger on her back. The drive to Camp Pendleton took 3 hours. Kira rode in silence, watching the California coastline give way to the sprawling Marine base that had forged warriors since World War II. Somewhere on this base, her father had walked these same paths. Colonel Gabriel Thornton, the Reaper of Ramadi, 94 confirmed kills, Navy Cross, Silver Star, dead at 42 in the streets of Ramadi covering his team's extraction. That was 18 years ago. Kira had been 9 years old. She'd spent those 18 years running from his shadow. Stanford instead of Annapolis, engineering instead of infantry, a safe career designing aircraft instead of the dangerous life he'd chosen. But on the night of her 26th birthday, standing alone in her San Francisco apartment with a glass of wine and too many regrets, she'd made a decision. She'd called the recruiter the next morning. Her mother had cried for 3 days straight. Her brother Grant, a Marine infantry captain, had tried to talk her out of it. "You don't owe him anything, Kira," he'd said. "Dad made his choice. You don't have to make the same one." But that was exactly the point. It was her choice now, and she'd chosen this. The bus stopped in front of a nondescript building with weathered paint and a sign that read Scout Sniper School. 12 candidates stood in formation on the gravel lot, their faces hard with the confidence of men who'd survived combat deployments and elite selection courses. Kira stepped off the bus, her rucksack heavy on her shoulders. The conversation stopped. 12 pairs of eyes turned toward her with expressions ranging from curiosity to contempt. A massive man at the front of the formation let out a low whistle. He stood 6'2" with shoulders like a linebacker and a face carved from granite. The name tape on his chest read Callahan. "Well, well," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Looks like the diversity hire finally showed up." A few men chuckled. Others stayed silent, watching. Kira set her rucksack down and walked to her position in the formation. She said nothing. Eye contact, but no reaction. Her father had taught her that much before he died. Never let them see you rattled. Callahan wasn't done. "What's wrong, sweetheart? Not gonna defend yourself, or you just here to check a box for the brass so they can show off their progressive values?" Another man, shorter but equally built, stepped forward. His name tape read Russo. "Callahan's right. This ain't about politics. Lives depend on snipers. You better not waste our time washing out in week 2. Kira met Russo's eyes. "I'm here to do the same thing you are. Learn, qualify, serve." "Serve," Callahan repeated, turning the word into a mockery. "You know what snipers do, princess. We kill people. Have you ever killed anyone? Have you ever put crosshairs on a human being and sent them to meet their maker?" The question hung in the air like smoke. "No," Kira said simply. "Not yet." Callahan grinned. "At least she's honest. But honesty don't mean shit out here. Skills matter. And Daddy's little girl playing dress-up in Daddy's uniform don't impress me. Something cold settled in Kira's chest. What did you say? I did my homework, Thornton. Colonel Gabriel Thornton, legendary Marine sniper, held the course record for 20 years. And here comes his daughter following in his footsteps like some kind of tribute act. Cute. Real cute. Before Kira could respond, a voice like gravel scraped across concrete cut through the morning air. Formation. Every man snapped to attention. Kira did the same. Walking toward them was a man who looked like he'd been carved from the same rock as the Sierra Nevada mountains. Master Gunnery Sergeant Franklin McAllister stood maybe 5'10", but he carried himself like a titan. His face was weathered, lined with decades of soot and sin and the weight of sending young men into hell. At 61 years old, he'd been a Marine longer than most of these candidates had been alive. Listen up, McAllister said, his voice carrying effortlessly across the gravel. My name is Master Gunnery Sergeant McAllister. You will call me Master Guns. I have been training snipers for 38 years. I have trained over 2,000 Marines and SEALs. Most of them are better men than you will ever be. He began walking down the line, his eyes scanning each candidate like a predator assessing prey. This course has an 89% failure rate. That means maybe one, maybe two of you will graduate. The rest will wash out. Some of you will quit in the first week. Some will make it to week 5 and fail the qualification chute. Some will do everything right and still not be good enough. McAllister stopped in front of Callahan. I don't care how many combat deployments you have. I don't care what unit you came from. He moved to Russo. I don't care about your PT scores or how fast you can run 5 miles. Then he stopped in front of Kira. I especially don't care about politics, diversity, or whatever agenda brought you here. Their eyes met. McAllister's were pale gray like winter ice. Thornton, he said, I trained your father, Colonel Gabriel Thornton. Best natural shooter I ever saw in 40 years. The man had a gift. He paused. He also earned everything he got through blood, sweat, and more pain than most men can handle. His course record stands at 98.4 out of 100. Nobody has broken it in 26 years. McAllister leaned closer, his voice dropping to where only Kira could hear. Legacy means nothing here. Your father earned his reputation through iron discipline and sacrifice. You start at 0. You want his respect, earn it. Yes, Master Guns. McAllister stepped back and addressed the formation. Training starts tomorrow at 0500. Uniform is listed in your packets. Tonight you will study the manual, all 300 pages. Tomorrow I will test you on it. Anyone who scores below 90% will be dismissed immediately. Are there any questions? Silence. Outstanding! Dismissed. The formation broke apart. Candidates headed toward the barracks, already forming small groups, the natural tribalism of warriors sorting themselves into packs. Kira picked up her rucksack. As she walked past Callahan, he called out just loud enough for her to hear. Hey, Thornton, when you wash out, tell your daddy's ghost I said hi. She kept walking, but her hands clenched into fists inside her pockets. That evening, Kira sat alone in the barracks, the 300-page manual open on her bunk. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Around her, candidates studied or talked in low voices. No one approached her. She was an island in a sea of testosterone and skepticism. The manual covered everything. Ballistics, windage calculations, mil-dot ranging, stalking techniques, camouflage theory, communications protocols. It was dense, technical, and unforgiving. Perfect for weeding out anyone who wasn't serious. Kira's engineering degree from Stanford gave her an advantage with the math. Ballistic coefficients, bullet drop compensation, even the Coriolis effect. These were just physics problems. She could solve physics problems. What she couldn't solve was the social equation. 12 men, 1 woman, all of them with combat experience, all of them doubting whether she belonged. A voice interrupted her thoughts. Hey, she looked up. One of the candidates stood there, younger than the others, maybe 25. His name tape read Brennan. Yeah, just wanted to say don't let Callahan get to you. He's an asshole to everyone. Brennan shrugged. Well, maybe a bit more to you, but still. Thanks, Kira said. You really Colonel Thornton's daughter? Yeah. Brennan nodded slowly. My dad served with yours, Operation Desert Storm 1991. Said your father saved his squad during a Republican Guard ambush outside Kuwait City. Single shot 1,200 yards, took out an Iraqi sniper who had them pinned. Kira's throat tightened. I didn't know that. Dad told me if I ever met you, I should tell you your father was a hero. Not just for that shot, but for who he was. Good man. Thank you, Kira managed. Brennan nodded and walked away, leaving Kira alone with memories she'd spent years trying to suppress. At 04:30 the next morning, the barracks lights slammed on with the subtlety of a flashbang grenade. Everybody up formation in 10 minutes, move your asses! Kira rolled out of her bunk already dressed. She'd learned in buds to sleep in her PT uniform. Around her, men stumbled through the chaos of morning routine. Outside, the California air was cold and damp. The candidates formed up in 3 rows of 4. McAllister stood before them, flanked by 3 instructor staff members. This morning we run 5 miles, full combat load, 40-pound rucksack. Time standard is 38 minutes. Anyone finishing after 40 minutes fails and goes home. Any questions? No master guns. Outstanding. On my mark. 3, 2, 1, move. The pack took off at a punishing pace. Kira settled into the middle, matching stride for stride. The rucksack dug into her shoulders. Her lungs burned. But this was familiar territory. This was just suffering, and she'd learned to embrace suffering during Hell Week. Callahan led the pack, his long legs eating up ground. Russo ran beside him. They moved like machines, their bodies honed by years of military conditioning. Kira focused on her breathing. In for 4 steps, out for 4 steps. Maintain cadence. Don't think about the distance, just the next 100 meters. Then the next 100. Then the next. At the 3-mile mark, 2 candidates began falling behind. By mile 4, one had stopped entirely, hands on his knees, vomiting into the dirt. Kira pushed harder. Her legs screamed. Her shoulders were raw where the rucksack straps cut into flesh. But she could see the finish point now, a marker flag in the distance. She crossed at 32 minutes, middle of the pack. Not first, but far from last. Callahan had finished at 28 minutes. He stood with Russo, barely breathing hard, watching as the remaining candidates staggered across the line. When Kira passed them, Callahan called out, "Not bad, Thornton, for a girl." She ignored him, bent over, hands on knees, sucking air. McAllister walked to the front. One candidate failed to finish in time standard. He's been dismissed. The rest of you hydrate and get breakfast. Be on the range at 0800. We're testing your basic marksmanship. If you can't shoot, you go home. Simple as that. The range was a stretch of desert backed by rocky hills that provided a natural berm. Targets stood at various distances from 300 to 900 yards. The morning sun was already turning the air hot and shimmery. Each candidate received an M40A6 sniper rifle. The weapon was a thing of brutal elegance, a bolt-action precision instrument capable of killing at extreme ranges. Kira had fired similar rifles during Bud's training, but never under these conditions, never with this much at stake. McAllister explained the first test. Known distance, 500 yards, 10 shots, 7 hits minimum to pass. You will fire from the prone position. Wind is currently 6 miles per hour from the east. You have all the information you need. Questions? None. Callahan, you're up first. Callahan moved to the firing line with the confidence of a man who'd done this 1,000 times. He dropped into the prone position, adjusted his scope, and settled behind the rifle. His first shot rang out. Downrange, a spotter called hit center mass. 9 more shots. 9 more hits. Then the 10th. Hit center mass. Callahan, 9 out of 10. Callahan stood brushing dust from his uniform. Damn wind, he muttered, but he was grinning. 3 more candidates went. Scores ranged from 7 to 8 hits. Then it was Kira's turn. She walked to the firing line, feeling every eye on her back. She could hear the whispered conversations behind her. the skepticism, the judgment. Kira dropped prone, pulled the rifle into her shoulder, and pressed her cheek against the stock. Through the scope, the target swam into focus. 500 yards. Wind from the east at 6 miles per hour. Temperature was 82 degrees. Altitude was 200 feet above sea level. Her father's voice came back to her from childhood. They'd been at a range outside San Diego. She was 12 years old, firing a .22 rifle at paper targets. Breathing, baby girl, that's the secret. Control your breathing, you control the shot. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 2, exhale for 4. And when your lungs are empty, when you're between heartbeats, that's when you squeeze. Kira inhaled, 4 counts. Held, 2 counts. Exhaled, 4 counts. Empty lungs, between heartbeats, she squeezed. The rifle bucked against her shoulder. Downrange, the spotter's voice crackled over the radio. Hit center mass! 9 more shots, 9 more times she controlled her breathing, found that space between heartbeats and squeezed. Hit. 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 On the 10th shot, Kira took an extra second. The wind had shifted slightly, a gust from the southeast. She adjusted her aim point 1 mil-dot to the left, squeezed. Hit center mass. Thornton 10 out of 10. Perfect score. Silence fell over the range. Kira stood safe the rifle and walked back to the line. Callahan stared at her, his jaw tight. Russo looked equally stunned. McAllister showed no emotion. Next test. Unknown distance. Targets from 300 to 900 yards. You must estimate range, calculate dope, and engage. 10 targets, 7 hits minimum. Brennan, you're up. The test continued through the morning. Candidates shot, some passed, some failed. By noon, 2 more had been dismissed for failing to meet standards. When Kira's turn came for the unknown distance test, she approached each target methodically. Using the mil-dot reticle in her scope, she estimated ranges. 320 yards, 540 yards, 710 yards. For each target, she calculated bullet drop, wind drift, even the slight effect of the Coriolis force at extreme range. Her Stanford engineering degree proved its worth. 9 shots, 9 hits. On the 10th target at 890 yards. A sudden gust of wind hit just as she fired. The bullet drifted right, catching the edge of the target but not the center mass. Hit outer ring, Thornton 9 out of 10. Still second best score of the day behind Callahan's 9 hits. As the candidates secured their weapons, Callahan walked past Kira. Under his breath, just loud enough for her to hear, he muttered, "Lucky shots, princess. Real combat is different. You'll choke when it matters." That night in the barracks, Kira lay on her bunk staring at the ceiling. Around her, men talked in low voices or slept. She felt the weight of isolation pressing down like a physical thing. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. "Thinking of you tonight, baby. Your father would be so proud. Come home safe." Kira typed back a reply but deleted it before sending. What could she say? That she was surrounded by men who saw her as a liability, that she was terrified of failing not just herself but her father's memory. Instead, she typed, "I'm okay, Mom. Talk soon. Love you." She put the phone away and closed her eyes. Tomorrow would be the stalking exercise. 48 hours in the field with minimal food and water, trying to infiltrate to within 200 yards of an instructor-occupied position without being detected. It was where most candidates washed out. Kira had no intention of being one of them. The sun had not yet risen when the candidates loaded into trucks for transport to the training area. McAllister stood before them in the pre-dawn darkness, his face illuminated only by the red lens of a flashlight. "This exercise will test everything you think you know about fieldcraft. You will start 3 kilometers from the target position. You must infiltrate to within 200 yards without being detected. Instructors will be patrolling with thermal optics and night vision. If they spot you, you fail. You have 48 hours. Most of you will not succeed." Questions. Brennan raised his hand. "Master Guns, what about food and water?" "You carry what you need. Hunt if you want. But if you're spending time hunting, you're not moving toward the objective. Prioritize your mission." No more questions. The trucks rolled out, dropping candidates at staggered intervals across the desert. Kira was dropped fourth. When the truck pulled away, she was alone in the darkness with nothing but her ghillie suit, her rifle, 48 hours of MREs, and 3 liters of water. She checked her compass and map. The target position was 3.2 kilometers northwest. The terrain was mostly desert scrub with occasional rocky outcroppings. Minimal cover, maximum exposure. Most candidates would try to move fast, covering ground during darkness. But Kira had studied the terrain maps for hours. She'd noticed a dry wash that ran northeast to southwest, passing within 400 yards of the target position. If she could reach that wash, she could use it for concealment. But the wash was 5 kilometers away if she took the indirect route. Time versus stealth versus the eternal sniper's dilemma. Kira made her decision. She would move slow, methodical, perfect. She pulled on the ghillie suit, transforming herself into a walking bush of burlap and local vegetation. Then she began to move. 50 meters per hour. That was her pace, 1 meter every 72 seconds, glacial, excruciating, but invisible. She moved only when the wind blew, using the sound to mask any noise. She crawled on her belly like a reptile, inch by agonizing inch. When dawn came, she was only 600 meters from her starting point. Most candidates were probably already a kilometer or more ahead. They were also probably already spotted. Through the day, Kira heard distant shouts, instructors calling out candidates who'd been detected. Each shout meant another washout. She kept moving. By nightfall of the first day, she'd covered just over a kilometer. Her body ached. Her shoulders were raw from crawling. Her fingers were torn and bleeding from the rocks. But no one had spotted her. The second day was worse. The sun turned the desert into a furnace. Inside the ghillie suit, Kira felt like she was being baked alive. She rationed her water, allowing herself only small sips every 2 hours. Dehydration set in. Her head pounded. Her vision began to blur. But she kept moving. On the afternoon of the second day, 36 hours into the exercise, Kira reached the dry wash. She slipped into it like a snake entering a burrow, finally hidden from overhead observation. From here she could see the target position, a small building on a rise maybe 300 yards away. 2 instructors stood outside, scanning the terrain with binoculars and thermal scopes. Kira still needed to get to 200 yards, another 100 meters. She waited for darkness. As the sun set and shadows grew long, she began her final approach. Out of the wash, now crawling through open ground. This was the most dangerous phase. One mistake, one moment of carelessness, and thermal optics would light her up like a Christmas tree. She moved only when the instructors were looking away. Sometimes she waited 15 minutes for the right moment, sometimes longer. At 44 hours, Kira was 190 yards from the target position. Close enough. Now came the hard part, taking the simulated shot without being detected. She settled into a shooting position, using rocks and vegetation to break up her outline. Through her rifle scope, she could see the instructors clearly. She lined up the crosshairs on a designated target point, a paper silhouette on the building's wall. Kira keyed her radio using the frequency they'd been given. "Sierra 1, this is Candidate Thornton. I have the shot." A pause. Then McAllister's voice crackled back. "Thornton, what's your position?" 190 yards, bearing 035 from target." Another pause. Longer this time. Kira could imagine the instructors scanning the terrain, using every piece of technology at their disposal to find her. "Candidate Thornton," McAllister said finally. "Reveal your position." Kira keyed the radio. "Master Guns, I'm 15 feet directly in front of Instructor Wilson." A moment of confusion. Then one of the instructors, Wilson, turned around and nearly jumped. Kira was close enough to see his eyes widen. "Jesus Christ!" Wilson shouted. "She's right here!" Kira stood slowly, the ghillie suit making her look like a creature rising from the earth itself. McAllister walked over, his face unreadable. He studied her position, her camouflage, the perfection of her concealment. "Outstanding field craft, Thornton," he said. How long were you in position? 8 minutes, Master Guns. And we had thermal scopes sweeping this area every 2 minutes. Yes, Master Guns, I used terrain masking and waited for your scan cycle. Something that might have been respect flickered across McAllister's face. Time to target, 44 hours. Most candidates who succeed do it in 28 to 30 hours. You took longer. Yes, Master Guns, but I wasn't detected. McAllister nodded slowly. No, you weren't. Get back to base. Debrief at 0800 tomorrow. As Kira walked away, she heard Wilson talking to McAllister. Master Guns, in 20 years of teaching this course, I've never had someone get that close without me seeing them. That was exceptional. Her father could do the same thing, McAllister replied. Looks like it runs in the family. Back at base, only 4 candidates had successfully completed the stalking exercise. Callahan had made it in 28 hours, Brennan in 32, one other Marine in 35, and Kira in 44. In the barracks that night, the dynamic had shifted slightly. Some candidates still viewed Kira with skepticism, but now it was mixed with grudging respect. She'd proven she could hang at least with the field craft, but Callahan wasn't ready to concede anything. As Kira cleaned her rifle before lights out, he approached her bunk. Nice stalking, Thornton. Really impressive. She looked up, suspicious of the compliment. But stalking don't mean shit if you can't make the shot under pressure, Callahan continued. Next week is the mid-course assessment. 15 shots under stress, win time limits, moving targets. That's where Daddy's little girl is gonna wash out. Maybe, Kira said calmly. Or maybe I'll surprise you again. Callahan leaned closer, his voice dropping. You don't belong here. Women in combat get men killed. I've seen it. Afghanistan 2019. Female attached to our patrol couldn't keep up. We had to slow down, protect her. We got ambushed because of it. 2 Marines died. Good men. That wasn't her fault, Kira said. That was the Taliban's fault. She was a liability, just like you, and I will not let history repeat itself. Callahan straightened up. So yeah, maybe you'll surprise me. Or maybe you'll prove me right. Either way, I'll be watching. He walked away, leaving Kira alone with her thoughts and the weight of his accusations. Week 3 began with academics. The classroom was a converted bunker with concrete walls and fluorescent lights that hummed like dying insects. McAllister stood at the front beside a whiteboard covered in ballistic equations that looked like hieroglyphics to anyone without an engineering degree. Ballistics is not guesswork, McAllister said, his voice filling the small space. It is mathematics, pure and absolute. You will learn to calculate bullet drop, wind drift, the Coriolis effect, spin drift, and atmospheric effects. You will do these calculations in your head under stress while someone is shooting back at you. He pointed to an equation on the board. This is the formula for calculating wind drift at 1,000 yards. Who can solve it? The candidates stared at the board. Kira studied the equation for maybe 10 seconds, her Stanford training kicking in automatically. She raised her hand. Thornton, assuming a 175-grain .308 bullet with a ballistic coefficient of 0.505 muzzle velocity, 2,600 feet per second, 10 mile per hour crosswind at 90 degrees, the drift at 1,000 yards would be approximately 68.3 inches. Silence filled the room. McAllister checked his reference sheet. Correct. He looked at her with something approaching curiosity. You calculated that in your head? Yes, Master Guns. Show your work. Kira stood and walked to the board. For the next 3 minutes, she broke down the equation step by step, explaining velocity decay, time of flight calculations, and the proportional wind drift formula. When she finished, McAllister nodded once. Outstanding. That is exactly how a sniper's mind should work. Mathematics saves lives. Guessing kills people. Callahan sat in the back row, his jaw clenched tight. Russo beside him whispered something, but Callahan just shook his head. 2 more candidates washed out during week 3. One failed the written examination. Another quit during a particularly brutal 12-mile ruck march in 100-degree heat. 8 candidates remained. Callahan, Russo, Brennan, Kira, and four others whose names she'd barely learned before they formed their own tight circle that excluded her completely. On the final day of Week 3, McAllister gathered the remaining candidates. Week 4 is the mid-course assessment. You will fire 15 precision shots under various conditions. Wind time, pressure, unknown distances, moving targets. Minimum score to continue is 12 out of 15. Anything less, you are dismissed immediately. Questions? Brennan raised his hand. Master Guns, what's the course record for this assessment? McAllister's expression didn't change. Staff Sergeant Callahan currently holds the highest score of any candidate this cycle, 96.2 out of 100 on a previous qualification shoot. That is an exceptional standard. Kira's eyes flicked to Callahan. He sat straighter, a smirk playing at the corner of his mouth. But the overall course record, McAllister continued, was set 26 years ago by then-Captain Gabriel Thornton, 98.4 out of 100. Nobody has come within 2 points of that score since. Every eye in the room turned to Kira. She kept her face neutral, but inside her heart hammered against her ribs. Her father's record, the standard she'd been chasing without even realizing it. McAllister dismissed them. As the candidates filed out, Callahan positioned himself to walk beside Kira. Must be nice, he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Having Daddy's record to chase gives you something to fail at measuring up to. Kira stopped walking, turned to face him directly. You got something to say to me, Sergeant? Say it clearly. Callahan stepped closer, using his 6-inch height advantage to loom over her. I'm saying you're living in a dead man's shadow, and when you wash out next week, everyone will know you never had what it takes. You were just a diversity experiment that failed. Callahan, McAllister's voice cut across the yard like a whip crack. My office, now! Callahan's jaw worked, but he obeyed. As he walked toward McAllister's office, Russo caught up to Kira. Look, Callahan's an asshole, but he's not wrong. Women in combat is bad policy. I've seen it fail. You seem like a good person, Thornton, but good people die when standards get lowered. Just being real with you. Before Kira could respond, Russo walked away. That evening, Kira sat alone on her bunk, cleaning her rifle for the 100th time. The repetitive motion was meditative. Disassemble, clean oil, reassemble. Her hands moved automatically while her mind spun through everything Callahan and Russo had said. Her phone buzzed. Her brother, Grant. How's it going, little sister? She considered lying, saying everything was fine, but Grant had been through enough combat to smell bullshit from 3,000 miles away. It's hard, she admitted quietly. Not the training. I can handle that. But the guys here, most of them don't think I belong. They're waiting for me to fail. Grant was quiet for a moment. You remember what Dad used to say about doubters? No. He said doubters are a gift. They tell you exactly what you need to prove. So prove it. And when you do, they either become believers or they become irrelevant. Kira smiled despite herself. That sounds like him. It was his favorite saying, usually right before he did something impossible. Grant paused. Look, sis, I can't tell you what to do, but I know you. Once you commit to something, you don't quit. So if you're still there, it's because you chose to be. Own that choice. Make it mean something. Week 4 arrived with unseasonably cold weather. Storm clouds gathered over the desert, turning the morning gray and threatening rain. The candidates assembled at the range at 0600, their breath visible in the chill air. McAllister stood beside a table covered in rifles and equipment. Today is the mid-course assessment. You will fire 15 precision shots. Distances range from 600 to 1,200 yards. Conditions will vary. Wind time, pressure, moving targets. You must score 12 hits minimum to continue in this course. Anything less is immediate dismissal. He picked up a clipboard. Shooting order is alphabetical. Brennan, you're first. For the next 3 hours, candidates took their turns. Brennan scored 13 out of 15. Respectable. 2 other Marines scored 12 each, just barely passing. One scored 10 and was dismissed on the spot, his dream ending in the cold morning air. Russo scored 14 out of 15, an impressive performance that had Callahan clapping him on the back. Then it was Callahan's turn. He approached the firing line with the swagger of a man who'd done this 1,000 times. For the next 40 minutes, he engaged targets with mechanical precision. His shots were solid, professional, exactly what you'd expect from a 12-year veteran. When the smoke cleared, Callahan had scored 13 out of 15. One miss at 900 yards when the wind shifted unexpectedly. One miss at 1,100 yards on a moving target. Still, 13 was the highest score of the day so far. "Thornton," McAllister called. "You're up." Kira walked to the firing line, her M40A6 rifle feeling heavier than usual. She could feel every eye on her, could hear the whispered conversations behind her back. She dropped prone, pulled the rifle into her shoulder, and pressed her cheek against the stock. The first target was at 600 yards, wind from the west at 8 miles per hour, temperature 62 degrees. She ran the calculations, automatically adjusted her scope, controlled her breathing. Squeezed. Hit center mass. The second target was at 700 yards. Same process. Calculate, adjust, breathe, squeeze. Hit center mass. Shots 3 through 5 were at varying distances, all stationary targets. Kira worked through them methodically. Her engineering mind treated each shot like a math problem. Variables to calculate, equations to solve, solutions to execute. 5 for 5. Perfect so far. Shot 6 was at 900 yards with a gusting crosswind. Kira waited for a lull, watching the mirage through her scope. When the wind calmed for 3 seconds, she took the shot. Hit center mass. Behind her, she heard Russo mutter something to Callahan. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear. Surprise, maybe concern. Shots 7 and 8 were both hits. Then came shot 9, a moving target at 800 yards. Traveling left to right at 4 miles per hour. Kira calculated the lead in her head. Time of flight 1.3 seconds. Target moving 5.87 feet per second. Lead of 7.6 feet. She placed the crosshairs ahead of the silhouette, led it by the calculated distance, and fired. 1.3 seconds later, the spotter called it. Hit center mass. 9 shots. 9 perfect hits. The crowd had gone completely silent now. Even Callahan wasn't talking anymore. Shots 10 through 12 were at increasingly difficult distances. 1,000 yards, 1,100 yards, 1,200 yards. Kira approached each one the same way. Calculate, adjust, breathe, squeeze. 12 for 12. On shot 13 at 1,150 yards with a quartering wind. Kira's bullet drifted slightly right, still hit the target but not center mass. The first imperfect shot. Her score dropped from 100 to 99.3. Shot 14 was at 1,200 yards with a moving target. She led it perfectly. Hit center mass. 1 shot remaining. 14 out of 14 with 1 not quite perfect hit. Her current average was 99.4 out of 100. The final target was at 1,250 yards. Maximum effective range for the M40A6. Wind was shifting unpredictably, gusting between 6 and 12 miles per hour. Temperature had dropped 3 degrees since the shooting began. Kira settled in behind the rifle. She watched the wind flags downrange, waited for a pattern. Wind came in waves like ocean swells. She timed it, waited through 1 complete cycle to confirm the pattern, then prepared for the next calm period. High gust. She placed the crosshairs, calculating for 12 miles per hour drift. Calm period starting. Now, squeeze. The rifle bucked. The bullet flew. 1.9 seconds of flight time. The spotter's voice crackled over the radio. Hit dead center! Kira saved her weapon and stood. 15 shots. 15 hits. Only 1 not quite perfect. Final score, 99.4 out of 100. McAllister walked over, his face still unreadable. Outstanding shooting, Thornton. Highest score of the day. Behind them, Callahan stood frozen. His face had gone pale, then red. Russo put a hand on his shoulder, but Callahan shook it off and stalked away toward the barracks. That night, Kira couldn't sleep. A sound made her turn. Callahan stood at the entrance to the barracks, his silhouette backlit by the exterior lights. He walked toward her bunk, his footsteps heavy on the concrete floor. When he reached her, his face was twisted with barely controlled rage. "You think you're hot shit now? One good shooting day doesn't mean anything." Kira swung her legs off the bunk, facing him. "I scored higher than you, Callahan. Deal with it." "Fuck that. You want to prove something, really prove it." His voice rose loud enough that other candidates were waking up watching. "Final qualification shoot is in 4 weeks. I scored 96.2. Course record is your daddy's 98.4. You beat both those numbers. I'll admit I was wrong. Public, in front of everyone. I'll apologize for every goddamn thing I've said." He leaned closer. "But you can't. You won't, because when the real pressure comes, when it actually matters, you'll choke. Just like every other diversity hire I've ever seen." Something cold and hard crystallized in Kira's chest. "You're on sergeant, and when I beat your score and my father's record, you'll do more than apologize. You'll acknowledge that women belong here just as much as men." Callahan's smile was ugly. "Deal. But when you fail, you quit this course. Walk away. Admit you never belonged." "Fine," Kira said. "Same for you. You lose, you quit. Walk away with the knowledge that a woman beat you at your own game." Callahan extended his hand. Kira shook it, her grip firm. 4 weeks, Callahan said. "We'll see who the real sniper is." The next morning, McAllister called Kira to his office. The small room was lined with photographs spanning 4 decades of Marine snipers. In the center of one wall hung a picture of a young Gabriel Thornton kneeling beside a rifle, his face lean and hard and focused. "Sit," McAllister said. Kira sat. "I heard about your wager with Callahan. Stupid." "Yes, Master Guns. You put your career on the line for pride. That's not how professionals operate." "With respect, Master Guns, it's not about pride. It's about proving that capability matters more than gender. If I can beat the course record, nobody can ever say I didn't belong." McAllister studied her for a long moment. Then he reached into his desk and pulled out an old, leather-bound notebook. He set it on the desk between them. "Your father's sniper logbook. He kept detailed notes of every shot, every mission, every lesson learned. When he died, his gear came to me. I've kept this for 18 years waiting." "Waiting for what?" "For you." McAllister slid the notebook across the desk. He wrote something in the back cover before his last deployment. "Read it." Kira opened the logbook carefully. The pages were yellowed, filled with her father's precise handwriting. Dates, distances, wind conditions, lessons learned. A life of service documented in ballpoint pen. On the inside back cover, in his distinctive handwriting, her father had written, "To whoever breaks my record, you didn't just beat a number. You proved something that matters. Excellence has no gender, no race, no limitation except will and discipline. If you're reading this, you're the best sniper of your generation. Stay humble, stay sharp. Remember the responsibility that comes with this skill. Every shot you take, someone lives or dies. Make it count. And if you're my daughter reading this, know that I always believed you could do anything you set your mind to. I'm proud of you. I always was. Love, Dad." Kira's vision blurred. She hadn't cried since Bud's Hell Week, but now tears ran down her face, unchecked. "He knew," she whispered. "He knew I'd try this. Your father was a smart man. He understood you better than you understood yourself." McAllister leaned back in his chair. "Now I'm going to tell you something nobody else knows. That 98.4 record your father shot it while running 102-degree fever. He had influenza, should have been in medical. But it was qualification day and he refused to postpone. So he shot perfect despite being sick as a dog. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand what you're up against. That record isn't just a score, it's a monument to determination, discipline, and refusing to accept limitations. If you're going to break it, you need to be willing to give everything. And I mean everything." McAllister stood. I'm going to train you personally for the next 4 weeks. Not because you're Gabriel's daughter, because you've earned it. You're the best natural shooter I've seen since your father. But natural talent only gets you so far. The rest is work. Yes, Master Guns. Now get out of my office. We start tomorrow at 0400. Bring coffee. You're going to need it. For the next 4 weeks, Kira lived in a bubble of focused intensity. Every morning began at 4 a.m. with McAllister drilling her on fundamentals. Breathing control, trigger squeeze, reading wind and mirage, calculating complex ballistics in her head. They shot in rain and heat and cold. They shot at dawn and dusk when the light played tricks. They shot with time pressure, with distractions, with McAllister yelling in her ear to simulate combat stress. In combat, everything is chaos, he told her. Rounds incoming, teammates screaming blood and fear and confusion. The only thing that stays constant is your training, your fundamentals. You master those, you master the chaos. Kira shot until her shoulder was bruised purple, until she could calculate mil-dot range estimation in her sleep, until she could read wind by watching grass sway and predict gusts by feeling pressure changes against her skin. Callahan watched from a distance, his face a mask of determination and resentment. He was training just as hard, Kira knew. This had become personal for both of them. On the day before the final qualification, McAllister called Kira to the range one last time. They stood together watching the sun set over the desert, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Tomorrow, 20 shots at varying distances from 500 to 1,500 yards. Scored out of 100 based on precision time and adaptation to conditions. You know all this already. Yes, Master Guns. What you don't know is why I've been so hard on you. Harder than any other candidate. He turned to face her. Your father saved my life 3 times. Somalia, Kuwait, Iraq. I owe him a debt I can never repay. But I can honor his memory by making sure his daughter is the absolute best she can be. Not good enough. Not almost there. The best. He handed her a small object, a bullet casing tarnished with age. This is from your father's record-setting qualification shoot. The final shot, dead center at 1,500 yards. I kept it as a reminder of what excellence looks like. McAllister's voice grew quiet. Tomorrow you're going to set a new standard. I believe that. Your father would believe it too. Kira's fingers closed around the bullet casing. It was warm from McAllister's hand, or maybe from years of being carried as a talisman. Master Guns, what if I fail? Then you fail with honor, knowing you gave everything. But you won't fail. You're Gabriel Thornton's daughter. Excellence runs in your blood. At 0600 the next morning, all 8 remaining candidates assembled. Callahan stood at the front, his jaw set, his eyes locked on Kira with laser intensity. Russo stood beside him, arms crossed. Brennan gave Kira a small nod of encouragement. McAllister addressed them all. This is the final qualification shoot. 20 shots. Maximum score 100 points. You need 80 points minimum to graduate this course. Highest score receives the Colonel Gabriel Thornton Memorial Award and designation as honor graduate. He paused. Current course record is 98.4, held by Colonel Thornton for 26 years. Staff Sergeant Callahan's class-leading score is 96.2. These are the standards of excellence you aspire to. The candidates would shoot in reverse order of their mid-course assessment scores. That meant Kira would shoot last. She would have to watch everyone else first, including Callahan, before taking her turn. The morning sun climbed higher as the first candidates took their turns. The shooting lasted hours, each man stepping to the firing line with the weight of 4 weeks of training on his shoulders. Kira watched them all, studying their techniques, their mistakes, their successes. Brennan shot well, scoring 87.3, a solid performance that guaranteed his graduation. 2 other candidates scored in the low 80s. One failed completely, washing out with 76 points, so close to the passing threshold that his devastation was visible from 50 yards away. Then Russo stepped to the line. He was a professional, his movements economy itself. For 90 minutes he engaged targets with mechanical precision. When the spotters tallied his score, the number came back at 91.8. Excellent shooting that would have been the highest score on any other day, but this was not any other day. Callahan walked to the firing line like a gladiator entering the arena. He dropped prone, adjusted his rifle, and settled in behind the scope. Kira could see the tension in his shoulders, the determination in every movement. The first shot rang out, hit, then another and another. Callahan worked through the course with grim focus. His shooting was textbook perfect, every fundamental executed with precision born from 12 years of experience. At 1,000 yards, he nailed a moving target on the first try. At 1,200 yards, he compensated for a sudden wind gust without hesitation. The man could shoot. Kira had to give him that. When Callahan finished his 20th and final shot, silence fell over the range. The spotters huddled together, calculating scores, double-checking numbers. Finally, McAllister received the tally sheet and studied it for a long moment. "Staff Sergeant Callahan," he announced. "Final score, 96.8 out of 100. A murmur rippled through the assembled candidates. Callahan had beaten his previous best by more than half a point. It was an extraordinary performance, the best shooting anyone had seen all day. Possibly the best shooting anyone had seen in years. Callahan stood and safed his weapon. As he walked past Kira, he stopped. "Beat that, Thornton, or pack your shit." His eyes held equal parts challenge and certainty. He believed he'd just secured victory. 96.8 was a phenomenal score. Only one person in history had ever shot higher at this course. And that person had been dead for 18 years. Kira walked to the firing line. Her M40A6 rifle felt familiar in her hands after 4 weeks of constant training. She dropped prone, pulled the weapon into her shoulder, and pressed her cheek against the stock. The world narrowed to what she could see through the scope. McAllister's voice came over the radio, professional and detached. "Candidate Thornton, you may begin when ready. 20 targets, 500 to 1,500 yards. Wind is currently 8 miles per hour from the west, temperature 76 degrees. Good luck." Kira's first target was at 500 yards. She settled her breathing, calculated the simple ballistics in her head, and squeezed the trigger. Hit center mass. Target 2 was at 600 yards. Same process. Breathe, calculate, squeeze. Hit center mass. She moved through targets 3, 4, and 5 with mechanical efficiency. Each shot was a math problem. Each problem had a solution. Find the solution, execute the solution, move to the next problem. 5 perfect shots. But these were the easy ones. Everyone hit targets at this range. Target 6 was at 800 yards with a crosswind that had picked up since Callahan's run. Kira read the mirage through her scope, watching heat shimmer dance above the desert floor. She calculated for 8 miles per hour and took the shot during a lull. Hit center mass. Behind her, she could hear the other candidates watching. The conversations had stopped. Everyone was focused on her performance now. Targets 7 and 8 were both hits. Then came target 9, a moving silhouette at 900 yards, traveling right to left at 5 miles per hour. Kira ran the calculation. Bullet flight time 1.4 seconds. Target speed 7.3 feet per second. Lead of 10.2 feet. She placed the crosshairs ahead of the moving silhouette and squeezed. 1.4 seconds of silence, then the spotter's voice. Hit center mass. 9 for 9. Still perfect. But the easy shots were over. Target 10 was at 1,000 yards, the 4-digit range where wind temperature and even the Coriolis effect started to matter. Kira adjusted her scope elevation, compensated for wind, added a 1/4 minute of angle for the Earth's rotation, and fired. Hit center mass. She could hear someone behind her whisper something. The words didn't matter. Nothing mattered except the next target. Targets 12 and 13 were both at 1,100 yards, but with different wind conditions. On target 12, the wind had calmed to maybe 4 miles per hour. On target 13, it gusted suddenly to 12. Kira adjusted for each, waiting for the right moment on the second shot. Hit center mass. Hit center mass. 13 perfect shots. She was matching her father's pace from 26 years ago. Target 14 was at 1,200 yards with a quartering wind from 2 o'clock. She took extra time reading the wind flags downrange, feeling the breeze against her face, watching the mirage. The wind came in patterns. High gust for 6 seconds, calm for 3, medium gust for 8, calm for 4. She timed it through one full cycle, then prepared for the next calm period. High gust passed. Calm period starting. 2 seconds in. Now. She fired. Hit center mass. 14 for 14, perfect score so far. Her average was 100 out of 100. But Callahan had been perfect through 14 shots too. The difference would come in the final 6 targets, all at extreme range, where even the smallest mistake would show. Target 15 was at 1,250 yards. Kira settled in, controlled her breathing, and took the shot. Hit center mass. Target 16 at 1,300 yards was a moving target. The most difficult shot yet, moving at 4 miles per hour left to right at a range where bullet drop was measured in feet rather than inches. Kira calculated lead elevation and wind drift simultaneously. The numbers flowed through her mind like water. She led the target by 14 feet, elevated for 62 inches of drop, compensated for 18 inches of wind drift, and squeezed. 1.6 seconds later, the spotter called it. Hit center mass. A collective exhale behind her. 16 perfect shots. She'd just tied the longest perfect streak anyone had achieved at this course in a decade. 4 shots remained. Target 17 appeared in her scope at 1,350 yards. The wind had shifted again, now coming from 9 o'clock at 10 miles per hour. Temperature had risen 3 degrees since she'd started shooting. The afternoon heat was building, creating mirage that made the target shimmer like a desert hallucination. She waited, watched, calculated. The mirage was heavy but consistent. She could work with consistent. It was the random gusts that killed long-range shots. When she felt confident in her read, she adjusted and fired. Hit outer ring. Not center mass. Still a hit, still points, but not perfect. Her score dropped from 100 to 99.6. Kira forced herself not to react. One imperfect shot didn't mean failure, it meant she was human. She still had 3 shots to finish strong. Target 18 was at 1,400 yards. This was approaching the maximum effective range of the M40A6. She took her time. 3 full minutes of reading conditions, calculating, recalculating. When she fired, she knew the shot was good before the bullet even arrived. Hit center mass. Target 19 was at 1,450 yards with a gusting crosswind that made the flags downrange dance. This was the shot that separated good snipers from great ones. The shot that required not just calculation, but intuition born from hundreds of hours behind a rifle. Kira watched the wind, felt it against her skin, listened to how it moved through the desert scrub. She was part of the environment now, connected to it in a way that transcended pure mathematics. The wind calmed for just a moment, 3 seconds of relative stillness in the chaos. She fired. Hit center mass. 1 shot remaining. 19 shots fired, 18 perfect, 1 nearly perfect. Current average 99.7 out of 100. Callahan's score to beat 96.8. Already beaten. Her father's record to break 98.4. Already broken. But Kira wanted more than that. She wanted perfect. She wanted to set a standard so high that nobody could question whether she belonged. The final target was at 1,500 yards, maximum range. The edge of possibility. Wind was variable, gusting between 8 and 14 miles per hour from 10 o'clock. Temperature was 81 degrees, humidity had dropped. The bullet would fly for nearly 2 full seconds, enough time for conditions to change mid-flight. This was the shot her father had made while running a fever. The shot that had cemented his legend. The bullet casing from that shot was in Kira's pocket right now, a talisman and a reminder. She settled in behind the rifle. Her heart rate had been steady all morning, trained through 4 weeks of stress inoculation. But now, with everything on the line, she felt it accelerate. Too high. She needed to be calmer. Kira closed her eyes and thought about her father. Not the legend, not the record holder, but the man. She remembered him taking her to the range when she was 12. Remembered his patience as he taught her to shoot. His hands guiding hers on the rifle, his voice in her ear. Breathe, baby girl, everything else is just noise. Find that quiet space between heartbeats, that's where the shot lives. She opened her eyes. Her heart rate had dropped to 68. Better. Through the scope, the target wavered in the mirage. 1,500 yards away, a simple silhouette representing a human being. In combat, that silhouette would be someone's father, brother, son. The weight of that responsibility settled on her shoulders like a physical thing. Every shot you take, someone lives or dies. Make it count. She would make it count. The wind flags downrange showed the same pattern she'd been tracking all morning. High gust, calm period, medium gust, calm period. She'd learned the rhythm. She just needed to time it perfectly. High gust came, 12 miles per hour from 10 o'clock. She calculated for maximum drift, 43 inches to the left at this range. The gust passed. Calm period starting. Now! Kira's finger squeezed the trigger with infinite patience. The trigger broke clean. The rifle bucked against her shoulder. The bullet left the barrel at 2,600 feet per second and began its long arc through the desert air. Time seemed to slow. 2 full seconds of flight. In that time, Kira could hear her own heartbeat, could hear the wind moving through the scrub, could hear someone behind her holding their breath. The bullet flew true, cutting through the air with purpose. It dropped 68 inches from bore line. It drifted 39 inches left from wind. It was affected by air density, by the Coriolis effect, by forces so small they were almost unmeasurable. But the calculations had been perfect. The execution had been perfect. The bullet struck the target, dead center. The spotter's voice crackled over the radio, but Kira already knew. Hit center mass! Silence fell over the range. Then McAllister's voice cut through it. Cease fire! Final score for candidate Thornton 100.0. Perfect score. New course record. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The magnitude of what had just happened was still sinking in. 20 shots. 20 perfect hits. No mistakes. No near misses. Absolute perfection under the kind of pressure that had broken countless candidates before her. Kira safed her weapon and stood. Her legs were shaky, her hands were trembling now that the adrenaline was fading. She'd just shot perfect. She'd beaten Callahan by more than 3 points. She'd shattered her father's record by more than 1.5 points. She'd proven beyond any shadow of doubt that she belonged. McAllister walked to her, his weathered face showing something that might have been pride. He extended his hand. Outstanding performance, Lieutenant Thornton. The best shooting I have witnessed in 40 years of teaching this course. Kira shook his hand. Thank you, Master Guns. Brennan was the first candidate to approach. He wore a huge grin. That was insane, Kira. Absolutely insane. Perfect score. I didn't think that was even possible. Other candidates came forward offering congratulations. Even Russo, who had spent weeks doubting her, extended his hand. I was wrong about you, Thornton. Dead wrong. That was the best shooting I've ever seen. But Callahan stood apart, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. Anger, disbelief, and something else. Something that might have been respect fighting its way to the surface through layers of prejudice and Kira walked toward him. The range fell silent again as everyone watched. She stopped 3 feet away. You challenged me, Staff Sergeant Callahan. Said if I beat your score and my father's record, you'd apologize public. In front of everyone. Callahan's jaw worked. His hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. For a long moment, Kira thought he might refuse, might walk away rather than admit he'd been wrong. But then something in his face changed. The anger drained away, replaced by a kind of resignation. Or maybe acceptance. You shot perfect, he said quietly. 20 for 20. I've been shooting for 12 years and I've never come close to that. Nobody has. He took a breath. You were right and I was wrong. About you. About women in combat roles. I let my prejudice blind me to your capability." His voice grew louder, addressing everyone on the range. "I have spent weeks trying to tear down Lieutenant Thornton, mocking her, doubting her, even sabotaging her equipment. I did this because I believed women didn't belong in combat. I believed they were liabilities who would get men killed." Callahan looked directly at Kira. "But today you proved that capability has nothing to do with gender. You outshot every man here. You set a new standard of excellence, and you did it with honor and discipline despite everything I threw at you." He came to attention and rendered a salute. "Lieutenant Thornton, you have my respect, you have my apology, and you have earned your place among the best snipers in the military." Kira returned the salute. "Apology accepted, Staff Sergeant." Callahan lowered his hand. "For what it's worth, I'm glad I lost this bet. You taught me something important today. Thank you." He extended his hand. Kira shook it firmly. The assembled candidates erupted in applause. Even McAllister was clapping, a rare show of emotion from the iron-hard instructor. But before the celebration could continue, McAllister raised his hand for silence. "Lieutenant Thornton, Commander Bradshaw would like to speak with you. He's waiting in my office." Kira's moment of triumph evaporated, replaced by sudden apprehension. Bradshaw was the commander who'd recruited her for this course. What could he want now? She followed McAllister to the small office. Bradshaw stood inside his uniform, crisp, his face serious. When McAllister closed the door behind them, Bradshaw gestured to a chair. "Sit, Lieutenant." Kira sat. Bradshaw remained standing, his hands clasped behind his back. "Congratulations on your perfect score, extraordinary shooting." "Thank you, sir." "What I'm about to tell you is classified. You will not discuss it with the other candidates." Kira's pulse quickened. "Yes, sir." Bradshaw pulled out a tablet and brought up a photograph. A woman in her late 20s, blonde hair, bright smile. "This is Ava Whitmore, 29 years old, American aid worker with Doctors Without Borders. 72 hours ago, she was kidnapped by al-Shabaab militants in Somalia. They're holding her at a compound outside Kismayo." He swiped to the next image, satellite imagery of a walled compound with multiple buildings. "We have intelligence suggesting they plan to move her within the next 48 hours. Once they move her inland, our chances of recovery drop to near zero. We need to extract her now." Bradshaw looked at Kira directly. "SEAL Team 3 is being tasked with the rescue operation. Standard direct action raid. But there's a complication. The compound sits in a valley overlooked by high ground. 4 sentries patrol the compound perimeter and rooftops. They need to be eliminated simultaneously before the assault team can breach." Kira understood where this was going. "You need a sniper for Overwatch." "Correct. The sniper position is 847 yards from the compound. Elevation advantage of approximately 200 feet. You would need to eliminate all 4 sentries in under 12 seconds to prevent them from raising alarm. If alarm is raised, the hostage will likely be executed before we can reach her." Bradshaw paused. "All our experienced combat snipers are currently deployed. We have one candidate who just proved she can shoot at extreme range under pressure. You just graduated this course 2 hours ago. You have 0 combat experience, but you're the best shooter available." The weight of what he was saying crashed down on Kira. This wasn't a hypothetical, this was real. An American citizen held hostage. A rescue mission launching in hours, and they wanted her to pull the trigger. "Lieutenant Thornton, I cannot order you to accept this mission. You can refuse with no impact to your career, but I'm asking you to volunteer. Ava Whitmore's life depends on those 4 shots. Can you make them?" Kira thought about everything she'd been through. The mockery, the doubt, the sabotage, the pressure. She'd proven she could shoot paper targets, but Callahan's question from weeks ago echoed in her mind. Have you ever killed anyone? Have you ever put crosshairs on a human being and sent them to meet their maker? The answer was still no. But that was about to change. "When do we leave, sir?" Bradshaw allowed himself a small smile. 18 hours, brief at 0600 tomorrow. Welcome to SEAL Team 3, Lieutenant." After Bradshaw left, McAllister handed Kira her father's logbook. "He would be proud of you today. Not just for the shooting, but for the courage to volunteer for what comes next." Master Guns, what if I freeze up? What if it's different when the targets are real people? McAllister's expression softened slightly. Your father asked me the same question before his first combat mission. You know what I told him? What? Fear makes you human. Training makes you ready. Trust your training. Trust yourself. He paused. And remember those 4 men you'll engage tomorrow. They're holding an innocent woman hostage. They represent a terrorist organization that has killed thousands. You're not a murderer. You're a protector. There's a difference. Kira nodded, but the weight of what was coming settled on her shoulders like a physical burden. That evening she called her mother. Rebecca answered on the first ring. Kira, how did it go? Did you pass? I got a perfect score, Mom. Broke Dad's record. Rebecca started crying immediately. Oh, baby, I'm so proud of you. Your father would be over the moon. I wish he could have seen this. Mom, I have to tell you something. The tone in Kira's voice must have conveyed what was coming because Rebecca's crying stopped abruptly. You're deploying. Tomorrow. I can't tell you where or for how long, but I wanted to hear your voice before I go. Silence on the other end. Then Rebecca spoke, her voice steady despite the fear Kira knew she must be feeling. Before your father's last deployment, he made me promise something. If you ever followed in his footsteps, if you ever went to combat, I was supposed to tell you this. What? He said to tell you that he's not watching from heaven. He's with you. In your training, in your discipline, in every breath you take. You'll never be alone out there. Kira's vision blurred. I love you, Mom. I love you too, baby. Come home safe. After they hung up, Kira lay on her bunk holding her father's logbook. She opened to the back cover and read his message again. To whoever breaks my record, you proved something that matters. Excellence has no gender, no limitation except will and discipline. If you're my daughter reading this, know that I always believed you could do anything you set your mind to. I'm proud of you. Love, Dad. The C-130 Hercules touched down at a classified forward operating base in East Africa 18 hours later. Kira stepped off the ramp into heat that hit like a physical wall. 110 degrees humidity near zero, air that tasted like dust and jet fuel. SEAL Team 3 waited on the tarmac. 9 men in desert camouflage, their faces hard with the casual confidence of warriors who'd done this before. Lieutenant Commander Wyatt Maddox stood at the front, arms crossed, studying Kira as she approached. Lieutenant Thornton, welcome to Team 3. I'm Maddox. You can call me Reaper. His handshake was firm, evaluating. Heard you shot perfect at sniper school. Impressive, but paper doesn't shoot back. No, sir, it doesn't. You ready for this real world, real bullets, real consequences? Kira met his eyes. I'm ready, Commander. Maddox studied her for another moment, then nodded. Good. Brief in 30. Get your gear sorted. The briefing room was a canvas tent with a folding table and a satellite photo of the target compound. Maddox used a laser pointer to highlight key features. Target compound here. 4 sentries. Sentry 1 north rooftop. Sentry 2 south rooftop. Sentry 3 main gate. Sentry 4 roving patrol. Thornton, your position is here. He pointed to a ridgeline. 847 yards. You'll have 12 seconds maximum to eliminate all 4 before they can raise alarm. He looked at Kira. Miss one or take too long, hostage dies. We walk into ambush. Questions? No, sir. Outstanding. We insert at 0200 local. Move to positions. You set up sniper hide by 0330. Assault team breaches at 0400. You call execute when you're ready. We move on your word. The weight of that settled on Kira. 9 lives depending on her shots, plus Ava Whitmore, 10 lives total. Corporal Hayes Brennan appeared at her elbow after the brief. Kira, didn't expect to see you here. She turned. Brennan wore SEAL Team 3 patches, now his face showing surprise and respect. They pulled me for this op. Apparently shooting perfect qualifies you for impossible missions. Brennan grinned. You got this. I've seen you shoot. Just do what you did at Pendleton. Except these targets are human beings. Yeah, Brennan's smile faded. But they're also terrorists holding an innocent woman. Remember that when you pull the trigger. At 0200 2 MH-60M, Blackhawks lifted off into darkness. Kira sat in silence, checking her gear for the 100th time. Mach 13 Mod 7 rifle, Schmidt and Bender scope, 40 rounds, night vision, ghillie suit components. The helicopter flew low 50 feet above the desert using terrain masking to avoid detection. Through the open door, Kira could see nothing but darkness and stars. 2 minutes, the pilot called. The team prepared. Kira pulled on her NVGs, turning the world green and grainy. 1 minute, the Black Hawk flared, hovering 10 feet above the ground. Fast ropes deployed. Go, 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 go! Kira hit the ground, took a knee, scanned her sector. The team formed up and began moving toward their positions. 2 kilometers to the sniper hide. 90 minutes of careful movement through enemy territory. They moved in tactical column using night vision and thermal scopes to navigate. Every 50 meters they halted to listen and observe. The desert was silent except for wind and the distant sound of generators from the compound. At 03:15, the assault team split off toward their staging area. Brennan squeezed Kira's shoulder once, then disappeared into the darkness with the others. Kira continued alone to the ridgeline. She found her position exactly where the satellite imagery had shown it, a cluster of rocks providing natural concealment with clear line of sight to the compound. She spent 15 minutes constructing her hide. Ghillie suit, natural vegetation, arranging rocks to break up her silhouette. When finished, she was invisible even to her own eyes. Through her rifle scope with thermal overlay, she could see the compound clearly. 847 yards. She verified the range with her laser rangefinder. Wind was calm, maybe 3 miles per hour from the east. Temperature 78 degrees, then she found her targets. Sentry 1 stood on the north rooftop, AK-47 slung over his shoulder, smoking a cigarette. Young man, maybe 25. Through thermal, his body glowed bright yellow against the cool purple of the building. Sentry 2 paced the south rooftop. Older, more alert. His weapon was in his hands, not slung. Sentry 3 sat in a chair at the main gate, head nodding. Fighting sleep. Sentry 4 walked the perimeter, flashlight in hand, checking doors and windows. 4 men, 4 shots, 12 seconds. Kira keyed her radio. Overwatch in position. I have eyes on all 4 tangos. Reaper's voice came back. Copy Overwatch. We're set. Execute when ready. This was it. The moment everything had been building toward. All the training, all the pressure, all the doubt and mockery and sabotage. It all came down to the next 12 seconds. Kira's heart rate was elevated, 78 beats per minute. She closed her eyes and controlled her breathing. 4 counts in, hold 2, 4 counts out. Her father's voice. Find that quiet space between heartbeats. That's where the shot lives. She opened her eyes. Heart rate 64, better. Through the scope, she studied her targets again. Planned her sequence. 2 on rooftops first. They had the best observation. Then gate guard, then roving sentry. She calculated ballistics for each position. 847 yards to sentry 1. 863 to sentry 2. 832 to sentry 3. 891 to sentry 4. Slight variations in elevation. Minimal wind drift at this range. She adjusted her scope for the average distance and made mental notes for the variations. Overwatch status. Reaper's voice. Kira took one more breath. Overwatch ready. Execute on my mark. 3, 2, 1, execute. She placed the crosshairs on Sentry 1's chest. Center mass, 847 yards. Wind calm, temperature steady, empty lungs between heartbeats. Squeeze. The suppressed rifle made a sharp crack, quieter than unsuppressed, but not silent. Through the scope, she saw Sentry 1's body jerk and collapse. 1.2 seconds from trigger pull to impact. Kira worked the bolt action. Smooth, mechanical, chamber new round, swing to Sentry 2. 3 seconds elapsed. Sentry 2 was turning, alerted by something. Maybe the sound of the suppressed shot. Maybe movement from Sentry 1's position. No time to wait. Crosshairs on chest. Slight adjustment for the additional 16 yards. Fire. Hit. Sentry 2 dropped. 6 seconds elapsed. Bolt action. Chamber. Swing to Sentry 3 at the gate. He was standing now, hand on his radio. He'd heard something. Kira placed the crosshairs and fired in one smooth motion. Sentry 3 went down, hand never reaching the radio transmit button. 9 seconds. Sentry 4 was the problem. He'd heard everything now and was running, weapon coming up, turning toward the building to raise alarm. Kira tracked him with the scope. Moving target at 891 yards, speed approximately 8 miles per hour, lead calculation 6 feet. She placed the crosshairs ahead of him and fired. 11 seconds. The running figure stumbled and fell. Didn't get up. All 4 tangos down, Kira transmitted. Clear to breach. Copy. Moving in. Through her scope, Kira watched the assault team flow toward the compound like shadows. They hit the gate at full speed, breaching charges blowing the lock. Flashbangs detonated inside. Then the controlled chaos of room clearing. 2 minutes later, Reaper's voice crackled over the radio. Jackpot! Package secure! Exfil in 5! Ava Whitmore emerged from the building supported by 2 SEALs. Even from 800 yards away, Kira could see she was injured but alive. The Black Hawks came in fast and low. The team loaded up quickly, professional and efficient. Then one bird diverted toward Kira's position. She broke down her hide, packed her gear, and moved to the pickup point. When the helicopter landed, Brennan reached down to pull her aboard. Damn fine shooting, Kira. Damn fine. The bird lifted off. Through the open door, Kira could see the compound growing smaller. 4 bodies lay where she'd put them. 4 men who would never see another sunrise because she'd put crosshairs on them and pulled a trigger. She'd killed 4 human beings tonight. The weight of that should have been crushing. But all Kira felt was calm. McAllister had been right. She wasn't a murderer. She was a protector. Those 4 men had made their choice when they joined Al-Shabaab and kidnapped an innocent woman. She'd just executed the consequences of their choice. Back at the forward operating base, Ava Whitmore approached Kira while medics checked her over. The aid worker's face was bruised, her clothes torn, but her eyes were clear. They told me you're the one who took out the guards, that you saved my life. Just doing my job, ma'am. Just doing your job. Ava repeated, then laughed weakly. You're holding a rifle that weighs God knows how much. You shot 4 people in under 12 seconds from almost a kilometer away in the dark, and you call it just doing your job. She grabbed Kira's hand. Thank you. For my life. For bringing me home. Reaper appeared beside them. Lieutenant Thornton, that was exceptional. Overwatch. Textbook perfect. If you ever want a permanent slot on this team, you've got it. Later, alone in the operations tent, Kira finally had a moment to process everything. She'd done it. Not just the perfect score at sniper school, not just breaking her father's record, but the real test, combat, lives on the line. She'd performed flawlessly. She pulled out her father's logbook and opened to the back cover. Every shot you take, someone lives or dies. Make it count. Tonight, her shots had meant Ava Whitmore lived. 9 SEALs lived, and 4 terrorists died. She'd made it count. Her phone buzzed. A message from McAllister. Heard about Somalia. Outstanding work. Your father would be proud. I know I am. Another message from Callahan. Heard you nailed it on your first mission. I was wrong about you, Thornton. You're the real deal. Respect. Kira smiled and put the phone away. She'd proven everything she needed to prove. To Callahan, to the doubters, to herself. She wasn't just Gabriel Thornton's daughter chasing a ghost. She was Kira Thornton, SEAL, sniper combat veteran, and protector of the innocent. The title of her story had promised they'd learn not to mess with the SEAL after they mocked and challenged the new girl. They'd learned it when she beat them on the range. They'd learned it when she shot perfect. And tonight in Somalia, the world learned it when she took them all down.